Hello, everyone. In this episode of Public Personalities, I'm joined by Noel Willcox, scaffolder and serving member of the Army Reserves, branch chair of Reform UK in Hemel Hempstead, and ex-candidate in the 2024 general election. Noel has built quite the profile in recent years for his fervent work to challenge corruption in the establishment, taking the Child Maintenance Service to task for alleged financial discrepancies and successfully contesting the legality of a lower emission zone signage. If you'd like to skip straight to the analysis, simply go to 47 minutes into this video. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Noel. Noel, welcome to Public Personalities. How are you today?
Very well, Jack. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
You're very
Very,
welcome.
very interesting. Yeah, I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation.
I hope so. I'm sure we will. We tend to anyway. So, Noel, tell me, what have you been up to recently?
Okay, so for those that don't know me, as you said, I'm the branch chairman for Reform. So, I'm very heavily involved with Reform UK, fully support the party as much as I can in every shape, manner, or form that I can. So more recently, I've been heavily involved in litigation regarding the ULEZ and the low emission zones. And for those that don't know what that is, those are the clean air zones that operate in London. And what they do is they've deployed signage, allegedly to give drivers what they're actually entering into. So this is all about signage. So what makes a scheme? A scheme, whether it's parking or wherever you go, anything to do with road traffic law, is a signal and a sign giving you the correct information. So, for example, if you were driving along a dual carriageway, you would expect to see speed limits in place, and they should be very clear and obvious to the driver of what those restrictions are.
Makes sense. Thank you, Noel. And tell me, what made you first want to take Transport for London to task over the low emission zone?
So back in this case goes back to the summer of 2021. And at that time, I was actually deployed throughout COVID with the military, and obviously because we were construction, the business was still allowed to operate. We weren't bound by the COVID restrictions because obviously you can't work from home when you're scaffolding.
Yeah.
So the lorry was still going out. Thank God we still had work coming in. If anything, it was probably our busiest periods where people were getting odds and sods done at home. So, it was quite a good period for us. And a driver was driving, I believe it was around Hayes, around there, like around the Hayes bypass, if my memory serves me correct. And we received 7 penalty charge notices, which totaled £11,500.
It's a humongous amount of money to be paying.
Just let that, yeah, sink in. I don't even know who's making up these penalties. It's crazy. So this was for commercial vehicles. So that would be, your Arctics, your lorries, your HGVs, your commercial vehicles, not the actual ULEZ, which is, for your everyday cars. So we received the £11,500 of fines. Uh, we appealed that to Transport for London. They had no interest. So I appealed it to the road traffic adjudicator. And at that time, I was quite limited on time because I think that the sort of hearing came around quite quick. They get through it quite quick at the tribunals.
Yeah.
And I probably only had about 6 weeks to prepare for it. But what I quickly realized was that these signs, there was an issue with these signs because they don't give drivers the correct information. And a lot of people say that they don't give you the correct information. But when you actually study the law, what they're legally bound to do and what they've actually deployed are two entirely different things.
Mhm. How did you find getting across all of that legal complexity to understand, first of all, what led to you being charged, the amount that you were being charged, and that not being correct, not being legally justifiable? How did you get across all that complexity to build your case?
Well, I mean, it was an awful lot. It was a very stressful time,
Yeah.
as you can appreciate, because they've got quite vast enforcement powers. particularly by bailiffs, and I couldn't afford for bailiffs to start coming to our yards, blocking us in, and all that sort of stuff. Because unfortunately, once bailiffs are deployed, it's kind of one-way traffic. You've got
Mm.
no other option really with bailiffs but to pay them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when they come. So it was a very, very sort of stressful time. So navigating my way through that process and doing it on my own was yeah, the complexities was very, very tough. And obviously running a business, you've got your own personal life. I've got many other things that's going on in my life. To then have to take on something else in terms of litigation was yeah, it was very, very challenging. But one thing that I kind of had picked up on and what I was reading about adjudicators was that people didn't have much success with adjudicators. And that was the very unique thing about my story, was that I actually won the appeal. And yeah, but my kind of plan of attack when I went in with the adjudicator was, I've got a box very clever here. And I kind of got hit, and I don't literally mean hit the adjudicator, but I kind of had to hit him from all angles to box him in, and not give him a way out where he could, dismiss my appeal. So I hit him with all the complexities of law. I've got to be honest with you, he was extremely fair. He allowed Transport for London 21 days to supply the evidence that either the signs are compliant with the legislation or they're otherwise authorised as non-standard signs. And Transport for London didn't provide the evidence. Now, they're putting it down to an administration error, but I'm simply saying they couldn't provide the evidence, because what they've later come out and said was that these signs were authorised in 2008.
Right.
Right. Okay. No, at that time in 2008, when the Secretary of State had authorised those signs, the TSRGD, which is the statutory framework, which is the Road Traffic Signs and General Directions, 2002 regulations existed at that time. However, the 22nd of April 2016, the new regulations came in.
Right.
And guess what? Transport for London did not do. They didn't reauthorize the signs, or they didn't bring the existing signs up to the legal parameters of the 2016 regulations.
Sense. Sense.
So
On a blunder.
really and truly, and how can I say, ever since then, so they were, because the adjudicator was absolutely correct. He said he can't be satisfied that the low emission zone is lawful. So
Mm.
therefore, no charge or penalty charge is payable. So no charge would mean the auto pay charges that you're paying to enter the zone, because he couldn't be satisfied that it was lawful. But he only said, I can't be satisfied because, if anything, I wish that Transport for London did provide the evidence, because then he would have categorically stated that the LEZ is unlawful. Words in law, what I've learned, are very, very prescriptive.
Yeah.
And what adjudicators and what judges say, etc., it's a specific language that they use.
Yes.
And getting that bit there where he said, I cannot be satisfied, to him actually declaring that the LEZ is unlawful, are kind of two entirely different things. So
Yeah.
what he was saying is that I'm declaring the LEZ by default unlawful.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's where we were at. And as part of that, he stated that Transport for London must issue a refund without delay. And that's what they have refused to do. So I have been pursuing them for the auto pay charges that I paid, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
£2,100. That's what I've been pursuing them for. But navigating yourself through this, it's an absolute minefield. It really is. And when you're up against a corporation who've, one, got statutory powers, two, the financial resources that they've got, and a full legal department, it really becomes that classic tale of David versus Goliath.
One thing I wonder, Noel, is you've decided to take on the establishment. What Is taking things on, is taking up sort of the fight against something, often against quite a great deal of adversity. Is that something which has been a consistent feature for you?
Well, I think this goes back to, when I joined the Army Reserves,
Mm.
and people always say to me, why didn't you go into the regulars? For me, there's no difference. There is no difference between the Army Reserves, and the regular army. One
Mm.
just simply does it part time, one does it full time. You all have to pass exactly the same standards, whether that's medical, whether that's fitness, whatever it might be. And when I swore that oath of allegiance, I think, that was something very sacred to me. And what I don't like, and one of the reasons, people probably see me as an anti-corruption campaigner or whatever it might be. I wouldn't even say that. I don't like bullies.
Mm.
That's what I don't like, Jack.
Yeah.
I don't like bullies. I don't like it when I see ordinary people going to work, struggling to make ends meet, fighting literally for survival out there, whether they're trying to get whether it's mums that are trying to get kids to school, whatever it might be. It's it's more for me, I think, a protection mechanism because I swore an oath of allegiance to my country.
Yeah.
But I swore an oath of allegiance to protect the people of this country.
Yes.
Even though, yes, I swore an oath of allegiance, to at that time Her Majesty the Queen, I kind of extended that oath to defending the people of this country. And if I see something wrong, I'm going to fight because it's in my DNA. It's in essence, it's what the state has trained me to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. So I wouldn't even classify myself as an anti-corruption. Yes, of course, there's an element of corruption that we see across
Yeah.
our public services and government bodies, etc. I mean, that's just relevant for everyone to see. We don't. That's a separate conversation, Jack. We could go on for hours and hours if we would talk about the amount of corruption that there is. We get that, but I don't like the bullying nature.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
this overbearing overreach of the state on a normal person. You know what? They are more tougher on parking tickets than they are on people that have committed these atrocities
Yes.
in these rape gangs and
Mm.
paedophiles. The enforcement
Mm.
and how quick that process actually is. If you haven't paid a parking ticket, they're all over you. And I can't quite understand, but maybe it
Yeah.
just boils down to money. And
Maybe.
I see that a lot of our public services now have become like vultures and they're literally just pecking away at the ordinary person that's going to work, who's struggling to pay their bills. The cost of living,
Yeah.
inflation's going up,
Yeah.
interest rates are going up. People when they got their mortgages for their properties, they're now paying way over the odds than what they ever budgeted for
Mm.
because interest rates are so high. So everyone's struggling, in this big, massive, dynamic world that we live in. Everybody's struggling, and it just seems to be that the state, what would be the right word here now, is really, really, as far as I'm concerned, using us as their cash cows.
Mm. No, was bullying something that you encountered when you were younger?
Yeah, so I'm a second generation immigrant.
Mm.
My family came over here from Ireland, so I'm of Irish descent. And obviously, at that time, the IRA was very, prevalent, throughout
Yeah.
the years of when I was going to school and stuff like that. So yeah, I received a lot of hurty words, discrimination, a lot of bullying, etc., because my nan was very, very Irish,
Mm.
and the name that the name that we had before, obviously, my mum married my dad was O'Connor. So it's a very Irish name, hence
Yes.
my name as well. Noel, it's an Irish name. So was I a victim of bullying? I don't like to say that because I just think it's just part of growing up.
Yep.
It was hurty words. I stood up for myself. And I believe that it made me the man that I am. But I didn't sit around feeling sorry for myself, and I didn't play the victim or anything, Jack. But what I did do, I joined the British Army
Mm,
to prove to myself and to prove to others that I am committed to this country.
thank you, Noel. Tell me, in which situations are you at your most confident?
I think when I'm representing the people,
Yeah.
I think is when I'm most confident. Because I kind of have to be. I fit into that role. Where I am speaking on behalf of people that can't speak for themselves. And I see kind of if I am fortunate enough to be elected by the people of Hemel Hempstead, that I can be their voice.
Mm,
So I think that that's where I have to fit into that role of being confident and being really conclusive in my arguments and what I'm actually saying to get the best possible outcomes for the people that elect me.
thank you. And let's flip it around. When you're at your least confident.
I suppose when I'm on my own, when I'm on
Mm,
my own and, that voice in the head starts and then you start doubting yourself.
uh-huh.
So I think that those are probably the times when I'm sort of at my least confident, when I stop from all the madness that I'm involved in and I'm actually sitting there and I'm actually reflecting on what it is that I'm doing. And you do question yourself, with this litigation that I've been involved in, going through this painful procedure that I'm going through, you cast those doubts upon yourself.
That's interesting. So you find that when you go into action, when you're doing things, you're at your best. It's when you're not doing something, when you almost have to go into your thoughts, that's when you feel you're least capable. But actually, for you, you're at your best when you're actually doing, when you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, exactly. When you're
Mm.
in the thick of it, and I think that's what I've been trained to do, really, Jack.
Mm.
you know the army doesn't teach you about that bit when you're on your own, but the army
Yeah.
teaches you, your fight and flight when you're actually in that situation, because the training's so tough. um you know when I joined it was exceptionally tough. When you go
Yes.
to places like Brecon Beacons and Dartmoor and all the rest of it, and you're getting put through all these simulations of training that you're going through, is very, very tough. So you're in
Yeah.
that moment and you kind of have to get on with it. But they don't teach you about that bit when you're actually on your own and then you're thinking about it. Hence why we have such an issue with the armed forces and PTSD, because it's that bit when you're on your own, you've gone out there, you've lived life at such a high octane level.
Yes.
Every day that you're going out of, I mean, it's the life, unless you've done it, people just don't understand. Every day that you're going out of the gate and you're carrying a loaded weapon, and then you come back to just reality, just to
Mm.
maybe, and I don't need to disrespect anybody here, but like driving a train or a bus or something like that. But you've lived life at such a high octane level that you come back, and it's that bit when you stop, which is when probably the demons kick in.
See. Thank you. And what did you most enjoy, or what I'm trying to say, what do you most enjoy about being an army reservist?
Definitely the discipline. It's definitely the discipline, the values, and the standards is what it's taught me. And I think that it's definitely made me the man that I am today. And I believe that it's made me respect others as well, regardless of your race, color, or creed. It's
Sure.
definitely made me respect others, because that's what the army teaches you. The army has taught me so many skills, lifelong skills that I've carried on into my civilian life in terms of organization, implementing systems, all that sort of stuff. Um, we always operate in the military from a very sort of basic level, because if you get your basic fundamentals correct, you can go off and do the more technical stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I used to always think to myself, why are we doing just continuous platoon attack, company attack? I've done it hundreds of times. Why am I doing a section attack? Why do I keep doing that? And then it kind of all dropped. The penny dropped. If you get your basics absolutely correct, then when it comes to doing the more technical stuff like the contact drills, vehicle contact drills, all that sort of stuff, everything kind of falls into place a lot quicker.
I see. I see. So That sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, like you're someone who you like being in the thick of it. You like doing things, and where actually when things are varying to a certain degree, that's better than if it's the same thing every single day. But you've also realized that simply by doing it repeatedly, that's enabled you to build up a sort of instinctual level of competence in what you're doing, which was ultimately the most rewarding part.
Resilience, I think, is
Resilience.
yeah, it's that resilience,
And
and I believe that mental robustness when you're worn out, tired,
yes.
when you've had sleep deprivation, when you're cold, wet, and tired, that's when the DS, which is directed staff, that they're really looking at you, to see the decisions that you're going to make, to see whether or not you're going to be, the, given the honor of becoming one of the commanders of, at the time, Her Majesty's Armed Forces.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think it was that resilience and mental robustness, and they kind of take you right to the edge,
Mm.
and they really, really do. And when you move on to the more technical stuff, like something called LFTT, which is your live firing tactical training, that's a
Yeah.
simulation that the British Army and yeah, it's a simulation that the British Army runs. And what it does, it takes you as close to war as what they can possibly take you in a safe environment because you're
Mm.
using live ammunition.
Yeah.
And it's 360 degrees. So it's your awareness of where, the man is next to you. It's your awareness of what's in front of you. It's all that sort of, thinking about muzzle clearance. All these sorts of things are the skills that you learn.
Makes sense. What do you find most difficult about being in the military?
As I alluded to before,
Mm.
I think definitely then times when you've got to sit there and reflect on
Yeah.
what has just happened.
Mm.
Uh, I think you doubt yourself a lot as a commander. Have I made the right decisions? Because ultimately, when you become a commander or a non-commissioned officer, you're going to make decisions that's going to affect the rest of people's lives.
Yes.
It's a very, very big responsibility that you're given.
Mm.
And right there, right then, what I learned about the army is that no one's going to second guess the decision that you make. Nobody's going to say to you that is the right or the wrong decision. Even when you go through Brecon, when you do your command courses in Brecon, even when the staff debrief you, there's never a right or a wrong decision. It's just maybe what could we have done better.
Yes.
And I think that's how when I go to court or whenever I do a TV appearance or, I do an interview or whatever, I always think to myself, what could I do better? And I think as long as you're honest with people, you can't go wrong.
Mm.
No matter how painful that truth is going to be, you just got to be truthful and open and honest. And then I think the public will buy into you
Yeah.
because you're not avoiding or evading those questions.
Yeah.
And they don't see a robot in front of them, they see another human being. And I think that that's what people want right now, Jack. They want people, real people, not robots who've got everything scripted in front of them. Make mistakes. It's fine. There's no problem to make mistakes, but learn from your mistakes.
Makes sense. What qualities, Noel, do you admire in other people but do not have yourself?
Um, what other qualities do I admire? That's a really interesting question. Um, let's take Charlie Kirk, for example.
Yeah.
I think I've got courage.
Sure.
I don't even have a teaspoon of what Charlie Kirk has got. In terms of courage, I definitely admire those qualities in people, having that courage to speak your mind, no matter how uncomfortable those hidden truths are going to be.
Mm. Well, no, you did say just before that you're about being open and honest, no matter how hard the truth is.
Yes.
So what is the difference there between you and Charlie? Is it really just degree?
I think it's just having, the courage to one, I wouldn't have the confidence that he's got to go into a debate not knowing what it is that you're going to debate. So
Hmm.
I think that we all like to be prepared. It's like I came on today with you, Jack. I didn't have a clue what we were talking about.
Sure, sure.
You know, um, so there's been no preparation to this. This is just literally all off of the cuff. And I think the fact that Charlie was such an intelligent human being, his IQ was just on another planet.
Mm,
He was very articulate, a
yes,
very holy man as well, an incredibly holy man. But I
yes,
mean, he really knew his topic. You know, if he was
did.
talking about Israel or he was talking about Gaza, if he was talking about Palestine, he was talking about anything at all, even the Bible, he knew exactly what his facts were.
Yes.
And I think that that is definitely some a quality in another human being that I really do admire.
Mhm. How are you at getting across large amounts of information quickly?
Um, in a subject that I know,
Mm. In something you know versus something you don't know.
when something that I don't know, I would be honest.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bluff my way through it and I wouldn't
Yep.
puff my way through it. I
Yep.
would just be honest. And I would say, to be honest with you, I don't really know. And that would be the God's gospel truth. Like if somebody asked me about, the ins and outs of what's going on in Ukraine, I don't know the ins and outs of what's going on in Ukraine. So I'm not going to comment on it. I'm more concerned with what's going on here in the United Kingdom. And I know
Yeah.
that Ukraine is a huge issue for a lot of people. Putin is a huge issue for a lot of people, but I think we've got bigger issues here, such as the systemic rape of young children. So I think that that is a huge issue that's
Mm.
not being addressed. And I think we need to divert our attention to what's actually going on here as opposed to what's actually going on in other countries.
Yes.
We've got too many
Yes.
problems here. So when it comes to getting large amounts of information across, that there, the jury's out on that. And when I say that, the jury is literally out because what I'm finding in court, I'm not being able to give my expertise or get that amount of information over. So I can't honestly answer that question.
No, no. Fair enough. Thank you. Another question I have, Noel. You said before that you're at your best when you're out there representing the people. Are you someone with a lot of friends?
Keep my circle very, very tight.
Hmm.
I keep I'm very selective about my friends because
Yep.
I'm very serious about my role with reform. The friends that are close to me massively respect what I'm doing. And if I go out, it's in a very civilized capacity because I can't be around people, who might take drugs. I can't be around
Of
people
course.
that could draw attention to me, for the wrong reasons. So I keep my circle very, very close. I keep my personal life even closer
Hmm.
because, particularly with what's happened with Charlie, and I'm not saying anything, that could possibly in any way compare to what has happened to Charlie
Hmm.
Kirk. But
Yes.
when you have a certain view which has been proven and people don't like that view, I don't know what that person would be capable of doing.
Makes total sense. So it's as much self-defense in terms of your own life as it is of your own sort of political reputation.
Yeah, I mean, the friends that I've got are very, very close friends, and they would do anything for me, and I would do anything for them.
Mm, mm.
And they massively respect, like I say, they hugely respect the position that I'm in with reform, and I take it very seriously, and so do they.
What qualities in these people have caused you to draw them closer, to make them your closest friends?
The military connection,
Mm,
that brotherhood, yeah,
yeah,
definitely, because it's the trust. You
mm,
see, that's what it is. It's all about, you see it in a lot of the films, like your Black Hawk Downs and all of that. It's all about trusting the man next to you, man or woman.
yeah.
It's all about trusting that individual next to you. So the friends that I have they definitely come from that military background.
Thank you. See, so outside of the political environment, the issues and causes that you are fighting, and outside of the bullies that you are holding to account, what do you like to do with yourself? What are your hobbies, Noel?
what do I like to? I like to keep myself in shape. I like to keep fit.
Yep.
Um, I love to watch TV. You know, when I get home from a hard day's work, I love to just unwind. If I can get into a series, what am I watching at the moment? Atomic. Love Gangs of London. You know, I
Yeah.
thrash Gangs of London. You know, the 3 seasons there. Proper boys series that is, isn't it? It's a proper
Yeah.
boys series. You know, loads of shooting, violence, all that sort of stuff. So I love that. A lot of chilling out, and then I love to spend a lot of time with my friends. And my family as well.
Mm. What have some of the people who are very close to you, whether that's family, whether that's your partner, whether that's anything else, what have they been able to provide to you that's been of such benefit to you and areas which have been more difficult for you?
Self-belief.
Mm.
That's what they've been able to give me. You know, the support, and you know, those people know who they are. The support that I've been given is unbelievable. In fact, I would go as far to say it's probably the people that I've got close to me inspire me to do more.
Mm. How do they do that? How do they inspire you?
They inspire me by sort of saying, look, we need more men like you. And, you know, I believe that masculinity has taken a huge tumble here in the
Mm.
UK. I think men have massively lost their direction and where
Yeah.
they fit in society. So I'm proud to be a man. That doesn't mean that I dislike women. It doesn't mean, that I'm misogynistic or anything. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love women. You know, I came from a single parent house. You know, my mum raised me along with my nan, and I have huge amounts of respect for women. So, but being a man is very important to me. And I believe that we need a lot more male role models in society.
Thank you. So we haven't actually covered the child maintenance scandal. So
No.
how were you drawn into that?
Okay, so I had a child from a very, very brief encounter, shall we say. And the child support agency got involved in my life. I didn't even know that my daughter had been born. I just
Yeah.
received a letter from the child support agency, and they were asking me some very, very personal information. And firstly, I never even heard of these people. So I phoned them up, spoke to them, they explained the situation to me, and they basically said that you got to pay. So that was my first encounter with the child support agency. And then subsequently, to get contact, I went through the courts. Found it impossible to get a DNA test, found it impossible to navigate my way through the family court system. And it really is what the mother says goes in court. That is a fact.
Yeah.
That's not conjecture. That is an actual statement of fact. And it was a horrific ordeal to go through. Lots of mud being thrown at me by Kafkas. The mother was just routinely breaching court orders. No penal consequences for her actions. And every time that you had to enforce the court order, it cost you more money. So I thought, you know what? This is just a money making scam. Let's bring this into context here. I'm entrusted to lead men on the battlefield,
Yes.
but I can't take my daughter to the zoo. How does that make any viable sense?
No.
It doesn't make any viable sense, does it?
No.
And that's where we are right now with the family courts. So the child maintenance service, they calculated my income in 2017. But what they did is they calculated my income using my 2015, 2016 self assessment. So it was basically a cherry picked income because it was the higher rate of tax that I had paid.
Yeah.
So immediately I tried to appeal against that decision to absolutely no avail. And the way that you are treated by the child maintenance service is absolutely disgusting. The minute you challenge anything with them, they immediately give you a stamp that you're non-compliant, and they start their whole enforcement procedure against you, which then led me into my investigations. I started looking at National Audit Office reports. I started looking and researching various select committees. And very, very quickly, I established that people like the National Audit Office were on public record stating that parents were pursued for debts where there's no evidence to substantiate that they owe. Now, the real darker side to this was a report that I read by a Brian Hudson, who is very good with data. And through a series of Freedom of Information requests that he had made to the Department of Work and Pensions, because the Child Maintenance Service comes under the Department for Work and Pensions, there was a very, very high mortality rate, extremely high mortality rate amongst paying parents. We were roughly losing about 5 paying parents a day who were on the CMS's books. Now, is that coincidence that they've all got bad health? Because what we can't get the birth, sorry, not the birth certificates, the death certificates. We can't get copies of death certificates. The CMS will not release that information because, of course, what is the cause of death on a death certificate? Potentially, it could be suicide. Now, I'm not saying that it is, but potentially it could be. So that's what started my whole campaign with the CMS, and I've been working with Anne Widdecombe on this. She sees that there's a huge problem here. Reform sees that there's a huge problem here. It took me a while to, get Richard Tice on board when he was the leader of Reform before Nigel came back. And eventually, I will never forget his words to the day that I die. I was on a Zoom call with him, and I was on a Zoom call with Nick Dark.
Yeah.
And we were on with Richard Tice. And his exact words were, if you did not see this, you would not believe it. We're talking billions upon billions of pounds that have been taken from paying parents of money that they've never owed. So where is that money going? Where is that money going? And then if we look back to when the transition happened from the Child Support Agency to the Child Maintenance Service, in that transitional period, I found something which was very, very alarming, which is where the director of the CMS was called Noel Shanahan. And at that select committee hearing, there was a legacy of debt of £4 billion, 3.78 billion, something like that. So there was a legacy of debt that was on this old CSA account.
Yes.
And he said, figure's not accurate. And why is that then? Because there's a tactic and a lever the Child Support Agency used to inflate incomes by 300%. That would inflate your income by 300% to scare you into contacting them. But of course, then what happened? When the paying parent, gave the Child Support Agency its correct pay information,
yes,
they never adjusted the arrears.
Yeah.
So those arrears. So if you were paying £100 a week, the system would think that you were paying the extra £200 a week. So the system was occurring those arrears in the arrears balance of £200, and that grew, which a lot of testimony that I've read have all stated that these are fictitious arrears, but they're collecting that money. And they're using their enforcement powers to collect that money.
Right.
So it's a very similar, but on a much larger scale, to the post office scandal.
Okay.
I hope I explained that right.
I think I look, you are the expert in this rather than I am. But it sounds to me as though they are making use of people in quite vulnerable situations in order to extract as much money as possible. That's what it sounds like.
Well, the very troubling thing that I keep reading, this money is collected. I know that it's collected because if you read the National Audit Office reports, they are collecting this money. But the big issue is the money that's being collected is not being paid to the receiving parent. So
Fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah. So
yeah,
the question is, where is the, as you say, where is the money going?
where is the money going? And when I say to you,
Yeah.
I have put this information out here in the public domain,
Yeah.
I could be held liable for what I'm saying. Have I ever been challenged, Jack? No.
No. Hmm.
I've said it on
Interesting.
all forums.
Interesting.
You know, GB News, Reform TV. I've said it on all forums, and nobody has said to me, "Hold on a minute, you're putting misinformation out."
Yeah.
I haven't put
Yeah.
any misinformation out because this is all stuff in the National Audit Office reports. Now, who is the National Audit Office? They audit government bodies. That's what they do. That's their job.
I got another question, just to switch tack, Noel. When did you decide that you'd like to go into politics? From your time in the military, from time being a scaffolder? What made you want to make that switch?
That's a really good question. I think it was a combination of a lot of things because if you look at all the wrongs that are out there, you're never going to be able to fix them. No matter how, the only people who have the real power here in this country, and it's just the way that our democracy works, are the members of parliament. They're the only people that can affect change.
Yeah,
You could have all the influencers in the world, people like Andrew Tate and all of these people who've got millions of followers, but what can they actually change? They can't change anything.
yeah,
So unless you actually get elected, you can't change a single thing. So all that's going to happen is if we keep voting Labour and Conservative, we're just going to get plenty more of what we've already got.
makes sense. And how long ago did you make that decision?
So sorry, I didn't actually answer your question, did I?
Right.
So when did I decide? So I think I first stood for reform in county council elections. It might have been maybe May 2021, something like
Hmm.
that, maybe 2022.
Okay.
So it was when the
Yeah.
party it was when the party was very, very new. When was it? Was it 21 or 22? I can't remember now.
I think, well, I think it was around, but going back to 2019. But I think it was in the Brexit Party form back then.
Yeah, so it was a Brexit party, and then I think maybe reform late 2021, maybe early
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, about then.
Reform was actually formed. Well, I just had a quick look at their policies, and I thought, you know what, this is something that I want to, get my teeth stuck into. But I never thought that I would be. I never ever in a million years did I envisage that I would stand in a general election.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Where do you see things going from here in the next, let's say, 10 years?
What this country?
This country or your life, where you want to take
Well,
it?
well, firstly, I mean, if reform is not elected as the
Mm,
next government, I don't think we're going to have a country left.
mm,
And that is the God's gospel truth. On this trajectory that we're currently on at the moment, I think an economic state, I think we're in serious trouble.
yeah,
And I think if someone doesn't come in with a different idea that this country is going to collapse and it's going to buckle. I mean, it's buckling already under the weight of mass immigration.
yes,
And that's what we talk about is mass immigration, where we've just got large volumes of people just coming in willy-nilly into this country. Everybody seems to think, that we're fascists and, all of these names that we get called by the mainstream media. Um, we don't see a problem with immigration, but it's got to be sensible.
yes,
So we don't actually see a problem with that. So I just think in 10 years' time, if we don't change the course of direction that we're
yeah,
going in, the direction of travel, I don't think that we're going to have a country left.
mm,
In 10 years' time, where do I want to be in 10 years' time? I want to have my own family, Jack. I'm at a
mm.
point in my life now where I think I've given so much to my country. I'm going to be a little bit selfish and I want my own family.
That makes sense. And I think all power to you in doing that. Um, in terms of setting up a family, how would you like, how would you like to be as a father?
I would want to be a role model for my children and make my children believe that anything is achievable and anything is possible. If I look at my own life,
Mm,
my life started in a council flat. My
mm,
mum worked very hard, got us out of that situation. She became very successful in Vodafone. Um,
Mm.
you know, yeah, so I was very lucky, very, very fortunate. But we did start, in a council flat. And what I've learned is if you work hard and you follow your dreams, you can achieve. And that's what I did. And I took the risk back in 2016, 2017. I can't remember when it was. And that's when I opened my company, Elevation Access Scaffolding. So
Yeah,
I, yeah. So, I mean, that's been going close to nearly 10 years now, fully audited accounts, all that sort of stuff. Um, but in business, what I've learned about business, you will never reach a cap. You reach a sort of cap and then you kind of got to go again and you got
yeah,
to go again and you get to that sort of turnover or whatever it is and then you kind of got to go again because you just stay where you are or do you really grow? Because at the end of the day, no tree or plant or whatever it is going to grow without water.
makes sense. And so for you, really, it's continuously shifting your own goalposts for your own success.
Well, we have one life. We don't have a dress
Yeah,
rehearsal.
yeah,
We don't get to come back and do it all again like it's a bad pantomime. We
mm,
get one life and you've got to make the best of that opportunity. Life
mm,
is very sacred. Life is very, very precious, and you get one life. And you've got to
yes,
go out there. You've got to live your dreams. You've got to do as many. People always say to me, God, no, you do so many things. There's no law that says that I can't.
yeah. I got one other question. Putting aside the bullies, putting aside, the people who abuse their power, what other things tend to frustrate and irritate you about people?
Laziness.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can't stand lazy people.
Yeah.
They sit around feeling sorry for themselves that they're a victim of society. Do you know what? Have a bit of man up juice, get a grip of yourself, get out there and make something of your life. Because listen, you've got two options. If things are not going great for you, and listen, we all have to deal with issues and problems. I don't know anybody who doesn't have issues and problems. Some bigger than others, some not so big, etc., etc. But the only person who can actually get yourself out of that rut, guess what, is you. And being dependent on the state, that's a form of control. They're controlling every aspect of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just not for me. And I can't understand why you would want to be controlled by the state. Because ultimately, yet again, that is communism, isn't it? They want to control every element of your life. And I don't want that for myself.
Makes sense. Well, Noel, it's been a pleasure interviewing you. I have, I think, a reasonably confident idea of what kind of personality I think you have, and I can tell
This is
you.
interesting.
Yeah, it's called the opportunist type. It is a type which is very much about the present opportunities around them and their exercise of their initiative to make the most of those opportunities in that present moment. This is a very vigilant, very hyperactive sort of personality, one that's also naturally quite assertive. They know how to get what they want in their immediate environment. And supporting them in that is their attention to their relationships, their personal attitudes. They can get a quick sense of whether they like a person or not, how close they want to be to a person or not. And they get a sense, okay, I want to protect the people close to me who I care about, who I value. And these people of character which I don't like from their behaviors, I'm going to protect the ones I like from those. And so there's really a sense of, on the one hand, being someone who is a fighter, who fights against the various kinds of adversity in life, and working through relationships, has these relations of support to help them through it. This is a type which is both social in terms of their understanding of who they are and where they are through their relationships, but one which also grows over time to become more and more independent. And it's the development of that independent competence, finding the knowledge and how to apply that most effectively, which is their pathway of growth. They start off being a bit more on the people pleasing side. They're aware, hang on, how do I read my competence? Wanting to look at how people are reacting to me emotionally. And you seem to know when you're on the right track, when people are out there and inspiring you to continue being that fighter. But it's not about the public reception for the sake of a public reception. If anything, what you really care about are your close one-to-one relationships, the people who've earned your trust over time, and those are the people you keep close. And there's a desire also, once the political side is over, to go and build your family, build those closer one-to-one relationships, and having that partner in life who can help you through it. So the private life is actually ultimately more important than the public. But what you want to do is go out and achieve, to be as successful as you can, to continue shifting those goalposts. There's a tendency of this type to be continuously driven and having difficulty with those who find their sort of peaceful comfort zone and just stick to it. And for this type, they're very much not about that. They have to continuously chop and change things up to make it better, to bring more success, to bring more financial prosperity, to bring more that greater sense of achievement in the real world, whatever that may be. It's also interesting that when we talked about why you wanted to enter into Parliament, it's because, you could be the influencer. You're clearly very good at building up your public profile. You've appeared on multiple podcasts, far bigger than this one. But what you seem to see as being most valuable is actually being able to make a practical difference through the legislature. And it's that which it seems to be the area which is valued more, which is also not then taken for granted. You are aware, for instance, of how what you do and who you associate with could affect your reputation, but not again for its own sake, but more how that will affect you to achieve your goal of becoming, say, an MP and being able to enact the real practical changes you want to see. In terms of rest, in terms of comfort and relaxation, that focus more on taking the fight to things, on overcoming adversity, or being as tough and resilient as possible, that continuously takes priority. Which means you often will deprioritize the day-to-day comforts. It's not that you're not aware of them, it's not a blind spot, but you say, right, I need to put this to one side. I know I got bits and pieces of me complaining, but I'm going to push to get things over the mile because that's what makes someone actually successful. There's also a weaker area here in terms of reflection over where things are going in the future, what you've done in the past. That reflectiveness in terms of finding your own path and your own area of significance, it is more an area of vulnerability where someone else could perhaps help you a lot more in giving you that sense of longer term guidance and direction. The fact that people give you that self belief in terms of how things will unfold if you just put your energy in that direction, I think also shows this, that you do have sort of the you have the sort of the legs, the feet to sort of run at things to make things work, but someone who can provide that longer term strategic insight and give you a sense that yes, this is direction to go in, and now that direction will lead to problems, can be very, very valuable in your life. And you've got that sort of tactical acumen to complement that strategic help. Trying to think what else I can say. There is again that focus on practicality, on finding the knowledge and applying that is valued. The part which then becomes a blind spot would be structures, consistency for the sake of consistency rather than because of its practical value, rules for the sake of rules, the trappings of bureaucracy. And there's this idea for this type that they need to be independently successful. And that means they need to take action to defend their independence. So when structures and standardizations get in the way, they get frustrated by that. Well, each situation to them, it depends on the situation. It's about your knowledge in the moment and how you can apply that to achieve things more effectively. So there's a tendency types to go up against the red tape, go up against the rules because it's not practical to the situation. In your case, it can be downright corruption. And so in doing so, there's a sense here that no, I want to instead build up a sense of competence from each situation to the next, to be empirically informed, to be informed in terms of practice and experience, rather than thinking about things just in terms of the theory and the ideology, which becomes overly restrictive. And for your type, it's about breaking out of those restrictions, being someone who can actually make things work in each moment as effectively as possible. Is that all making sense, Noel? Do you have any questions or any objections?
Nice. It was quite fascinating listening to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was, yeah, very, very fascinating listening to it. So I suppose it does. Yeah, I mean, I think you've got my drivers nailed.
Thank you. I can also say who that's like in the world of fame and fortune. Um, there's I think Mark Cuban is one of these. Also, going more historically, Julius Caesar,
Oh wow.
and this is a type that's willing to take big risks and big gambles sometimes, and as long as they have that tactical confidence to do it. The problem for them is not taking charge of the moment, winning the close loyalty of people around them. They have a very good background charisma. They kind of take their charisma almost a bit more for granted. They know that they're going to be able to get along well with people, as long as they want to like those people and build those sorts of relationships the way they want it to be. And that's the key thing, the key focus. But where it's in the long term, where it's a question of what actions am I doing now, how that lead to consequences later, that's where they needed the help. So when it came to Julius Caesar, yeah, he managed to essentially conquer Rome, defeat his enemies in the trifecta, and then there was a question of him running it. He declared himself dictator for life, and he started unfortunately running over certain rules and structures because he was thinking very pragmatic. I've got to solve this problem right now. I've got to solve that problem there, this problem there, in a sort of whatever works way. And as a result, he then got assassinated. But he wouldn't have been able to get there if it weren't for a huge amount of willpower, assertiveness, charisma, the ability to take a gamble, and that ability to also learn from mistakes he had made in order to actually improve, which shows up very much in his writing. I think of other examples. Franklin D. Roosevelt, another one where very habitually charismatic, pretty much invented this sort of fireside chat style, very personable, relatable. Would also take an whatever works approach, didn't stick to set ideologies, allowed himself to sort of go off for tram lines in terms of you have to do it this way. He threw pretty much every economic possibility at the wall to see what stuck in order to get through the Great Depression. Sometimes it made it worse rather than better, but the point is he was able to find a practical way through without sticking to just set ideologies. And that is that tactical ability which this type brings the most. That tactical ability with people, and they grow towards the efficiency and productivity. Do you have any other questions, Noel? Anything at all?
No, I think you've covered everything, Jack.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and
Thank you.
yeah, I hope we'll speak soon. And
Definitely.
take care.
Good to see you as well.
All the best. Bye bye,
Take care.
and
Cheers,
thank you
Jack.
for tuning in. Hi there. You may have seen some of my interviews online where I analyze people's personality types. If that's something which interests you, you can book your own diagnostic interview for £100 just by clicking the link in the description below. This entitles you to a 1 hour interview and a complimentary 1 hour follow up session to help you to fully understand your type. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be public if you don't want it to be, and most of my paid interviews are actually done privately. If, however, you are what can be considered to be a public figure with a large following online, there is an opportunity to have a 90-minute interview and personality analysis free of charge, as long as you agree to promote this interview and increase traffic to my channel. To arrange this, all you need to do is email jack@worldsocionics.org. I repeat, that's jack@worldsocionics.org. Thank you very much for listening.